Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2017 webinar presented by the Center for Research Libraries, Making the Most of CRL Collections. We're very pleased to have so many registered for this event, and for all of you who are able to join us and who are just joining in, we're very pleased to have you. Registrations include many new and long-standing members of CRL, as well as several new members which have recently joined us. The participant list indicates that we have participants from Montreal to San Diego and Miami up to Seattle, so we're really crisscrossing the country. So welcome, everybody. This webinar is newly designed to highlight CRL's rich and diverse collections. It's a great introduction, or perhaps a refresher, for those of you who've been CRL members for some time, on our collections. And we'll share lots of new information about new developments in our collecting activity. Just a moment of housekeeping. We have muted all of the phones or microphones on entry. That's to reduce on the background noise, or if you're watching in a communal room. And those phones will remain muted throughout the duration of the presentation. So we do encourage you to submit your questions or comments or thoughts via the chat function on WebEx, which you may see at the right side of your screen or up in the top toolbar where you can see the chat bubble. You can submit those questions or comments at any time during the presentation, and we will make sure that we try to address them as soon as we can. And there'll be some time at the end for discussion or questions and answers. So before we begin, just permit me perhaps to undertake a brief diversion into a few vignettes that highlight the many impacts of CRL. A historian at Western University in Ontario has made extensive use of CRL's rich collection of Vietnamese newspapers to assess Vietnam's attempts at nation building following partition in 1954. These resources significantly augmented the research profile of that mid-sized Canadian university, which does not traditionally collect specialized sources on Southeast Asia. A professor of history at the University of Iowa has used newspapers digitized by CRL from its collections for his upper-level undergraduate class on imperialism and modern India. Students consulted the papers to read contemporary accounts of the clash between Mahatma Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar over new constitutional arrangements for voting introduced by the British colonial government. These students were able to access the scanned materials at all hours, rather than being requested to visit the library and consult the material on microfilm. A team of academics at Cornell University recently asked CRL to digitize a range of Latin American literary publications for a text mining project to study the trends of influence of literary networks in the modern era. CRL has digitized more than 50,000 pages from several historical titles and recently completed the scanning of a long run of Zigzag, an important cultural magazine from Chile. And finally, the University of Connecticut, with funding assistance from the Latin American Materials Project, or LAMP, of CRL, digitized more than 5,000 Puerto Rican court documents from its collection, dating between 1844 and 1900, thus enabling widespread access to a trove of research materials on Puerto Rico's social dynamics during the 19th century, and restoring an important gap in the holdings of the General Archives of Puerto Rico. These are just a few examples of the many ways institutions are making the most of CRL's collections and services. These and many other stories of the impact of CRL can be found on CRL's website. With that, let me introduce today's agenda. In spring 2017, we presented a webinar on accessing CRL collections, providing in-depth and instructive information on the ways to discover, access, and promote CRL's collections and services. Today's presentation is complementary to that one, with a stronger emphasis on our collection strengths and providing key highlights of CRL's services. We encourage you to go and watch and share that earlier presentation, which is available on CRL's YouTube channel. So our agenda today will focus on CRL's collections and how you may get access and discover those materials and promote the use on campus. We will also introduce some new tools for marketing CRL locally and have time for your questions and answers via the chat screen. Our presenters today include myself, James Simon, Vice President for Collections and Services. I'm accompanied here by Amy Wood, the Head of Technical Services, Kevin Wilkes, the Head of Access Services, Mary Wilkie, our Member Liaison and Outreach Services Director, and Virginia Kerr, the Head of Communications and Development at CRL. Over the course of the next hour, we will be hopefully illuminating and entertaining you about CRL's collection strengths. And let me lead off with that section here. CRL supports a broad mission to support original research and inspired teaching in the humanities, sciences, and social sciences by preserving and making available to scholars a wealth of rare and uncommon primary source materials from all world regions. We have particular strengths in the humanities and social sciences, in such fields as history, political science, languages and literature, philosophy and religion, area and international studies. From our own collections, CRL significantly augments the resources available for CRL members through its collection partnerships in the areas of law and government, as well as science, technology, and engineering. The approximately 5 million newspapers, journals, books, pamphlets, archives, government documents, and more held by CRL help fulfill that mission to support research and teaching. This chart shows a rough breakdown of the observable universe of CRL resources, as noted in our catalog and held here in our facility in Chicago. I should note that this chart doesn't necessarily represent the entirety of CRL's collection, as many of our special collections are only described in brief, and that this chart represents a volume count, or an approximate volume count of CRL's collections, rather than by piece, which might help explain the rather small representation of news in this particular chart. And I'll start here with the news resources as part of CRL's collection. CRL holds more than 18,000 titles cataloged in our CRL's online catalog. Newspapers held in print, microformat, and digital. Our newspaper collection circulates quite heavily and are used in a variety of research fields. Approximately 25% of the newspaper collection are U.S. general circulation newspapers, which cover all states and territories and date from the colonial times to the present. Nearly 9,500 titles, or just over half of the newspaper collection, are foreign and international newspapers. Coverage of those range from the mid-1700s to the present, and we have particular strengths in Europe and the UK, Latin America, Africa, China, Russia, South Asia, and more. CRL has an extensive and active collecting program in news, and we also engage in digitization from our collection. As of August of this year, approximately 130,000 issues from more than 750 titles have been scanned as a result of direct patron requests from CRL member institutions. Some examples of titles that have been scanned in recent months include the Daily Missouri Democrat from the years 1853 to 1858, contemporary newspapers such as Naledi ya Botswana or the African Echo from the 1940s through the 1960s, and the Pacific Appeal, an African-American paper from San Francisco, digitized from 1862 to 1873. CRL has been emphasizing digitization of Latin American newspapers this current fiscal year, and we conduct additional digitization activities with partner institutions, and we engage extensively in licensing of news resources. I want to highlight one aspect of the news collection here, and in particular, as it supports original research in areas such as migration and ethnic studies. This example can be highlighted in CRL's U.S. and Canadian ethnic press collection, which holds more than 1,800 titles covering from the 1800s to the present for such diverse communities as Polish Americans in 19th century Chicago, African Americans along the Atlantic seaboard, and recently established communities on the West Coast, from East Asia and from the Middle East. In many cases, CRL's runs of these titles are extensive, and for a number of them are the longest or most complete files available anywhere in North America. In 2017, CRL supported a number of institutions by supplying content for U.S. ethnic titles for digitization through the NDNP, the Library of Congress and NEH newspaper digitization program. We also have special collections in our news domain, including radical, left-wing, and opposition newspapers, and a special collection of newsletters produced by the Civilian Conservation Corps camps during the New Deal era. Second major aspect of our collection that we like to highlight is the foreign doctoral dissertations. Those are dissertations produced by degree granting programs from institutions outside the United States and Canada. We have more than 800,000 foreign doctoral dissertations cataloged within CRL's collection. These dissertations cover all dates, subjects, and languages represented within this collection. Our earliest dissertation comes from from 1605, although the bulk of this collection was produced in the 20th century. In fact, 66% of this collection is dated after 1945. The majority of the dissertations we hold were produced from Western Europe, including Germany, France, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Scandinavia, as well as the United Kingdom. Many of the other dissertations we hold are representative of other world areas, including other countries in Europe, Latin America, Africa, and more. An example of some of the uses of these dissertations includes historical studies in the areas of medicine, science, and philosophy, and in particular, the studies of the history of public health. An example can be seen here in the center of the screen for an early dissertation produced in 1909 on the first solid experimental and clinical study on the toxicity of tobacco, showing the effects on organs over time. Whereas prior to the late 19th century, tobacco was often considered a universal medicine for a variety of health purposes. CRL engages in digitization of its dissertation collection on demand, and we continue to acquire materials for scholars through our demand purchase program, of which you'll learn a little more later. We also work closely with institutions now increasingly to supply dissertations in electronic format, which we are able to either deliver directly to the patron or host on CRL's own servers. CRL's serials collection makes up a significant portion of our building by volume. With more than 70,000 catalog titles and millions of volumes in our collection, the journals collection is a heavy component of CRL's overall collection profile. Our journals are held mostly in hard copy. In fact, CRL maintains an important print repository role to maintain and preserve these materials on behalf of North American scholars and libraries. About 50% of our journal collection was published after 1945. In fact, 80% of the collection that we hold were journals produced within the 20th century itself. These include such important materials as 19th and early 20th century trade journals from the United States, early academic and missionary society publications, serials acquired from the LC cooperative acquisition programs, collecting materials from regions such as India, Pakistan, and Indonesia, Russian Academy of Science journals covering a range of disciplines, and scientific materials collected from East Asia. The subject strengths are across all of the areas, but are particularly strong in the areas of agriculture, economic and social conditions, industry and labor, law, literature, medicine, politics, as well as science and engineering. CRL has paid attention recently to a special focus on trade and industry within its early periodical collection. Several years ago, CRL partnered with ProQuest on its American Periodicals series to scan over 3 million pages of CRL journal content. This collection came from CRL's general interest magazines and trade journals from the period of 1850 to about 1920, covering technology, industry, agriculture, medicine, and other areas. More recently, CRL has partnered with the Linda Hall Library to digitize selected high-value serials published before 1950 that are held by our two organizations. Many of these titles related to early civil engineering, mechanical engineering, aeronautics, and railroads, and featured such titles as the Mechanical Engineer and Arms and Explosives. These titles, as they are scanned, are made available to CRL institutions through CRL's digital delivery service. CRL's Government Documents and Archives collection. We hold extensive collections of government archives information, particularly in microform. CRL continues to acquire materials from such organizations as the National Archives and Records Administration and the UK National Archives. We also hold extensive U.S. state agency documents. These include substantial files of legislative journals, administrative and financial reports of all major and many minor state agencies, budgets, statistical publications, and reports of the governor, legislature, and other commissions. The holdings from the U.S. state agencies include materials from the colonial times through approximately 1950. We also have extensive foreign government documents, which is not as comprehensive perhaps as the U.S. state agencies, as this collection was formed, the bulk of this collection was formed from original deposits from member institutions. However, we do have extensive strengths in materials from Western Europe, Latin America, and Canada, with some coverage from other world areas as well. The dates of these, again, extend primarily from 1800 to about 1950, although earlier and later dates are held. And we have much later foreign government documents that we collected through the Library of Congress acquisition programs for South and Southeast Asia, as well as Eastern Europe. Just wanted to highlight some of the uses of this material include important colonial studies. CRL has extensive sets of materials, as I mentioned, from the UK National Archives, but also from the German Ministry for Colonial Affairs, the Dutch and British East India Companies, as well as a large collection of colonial materials from the Central American Archives. We also have many official statistical publications, annual departmental reports, parliamentary papers, and other materials that can support a broad range of colonial studies. Finally, I just wanted to mention CRL's international and area studies collections as a special highlight. An important driver for CRL's collections are the Area Materials Projects, or AMPs, of the Center for Research Libraries, which include programs to identify and preserve materials from Africa, Latin America, the Middle East, South Asia, Southeast Asia, as well as Central and Eastern Europe. These programs identify and collect a broad range of materials, such as those that we've described earlier, like newspapers, institutional archives, and governmental reports. These collections are characterized by uncommon material, deep collections, specialized language resources, and partnerships with in-region institutions to make these materials accessible. They are also a driver for a growing body of digital resources at CRL, in addition to ongoing work preserving materials in microform. They support a broad range of studies, including studies on areas inflicted by war and conflict. During the past several years, CRL's AMPs have supported the preservation of hundreds of newspaper titles that ensure scholarly access to news from areas of recent conflict, including Iraq, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Afghanistan, and Zimbabwe. Some highlights on the screen include Somali and Liberian newspapers preserved by Camp El Diario de Juarez, which documented the extreme violence and government action in Mexico, preserved by LAMP, and Iraqi newspapers following the 2003 invasion, preserved by MEMP. These resources add to an already rich trove of historical documentation from CRL from areas such as South and Southeast Asia, Japan, Europe, and other areas where war and conflict are critical areas of study. I've mentioned digitization over several of these different categories, and I just wanted to highlight here the growing body of digital materials that CRL makes available through its digital delivery service. This may be a little difficult for you to read on your screen, I'm not sure, but you might be able to see if we count our materials by item, and an item may be as broad as a book volume or an issue of a newspaper. You'll see that newspapers make up approximately half of CRL's digital resources hosted internally here at CRL. That's augmented by foreign government documents, serials, and monographs, as well as several special collections that we've made available. We'll talk a little bit more about our digital delivery service here in just a moment. I'm running a bit short on time, so I'm going to speed up just a brief description of how CRL's collection partnerships have brought new expertise and resources to bear on our own efforts to digitize, archive, and provide access to resources. Our partnerships emphasize digital access along with a strong commitment for preservation and retention of the original source materials. We have partnered with several organizations, including Redex, on the digitization of our news collections. These are historical newspapers digitized at large scale, and we've produced several million pages of materials for historical content from Africa, Latin America, and South Asia through the World Newspaper Archive. Likewise, we work in concert with a number of institutions on the preservation and digitization of historical agricultural research materials, including agricultural and agricultural extension publications that have been digitized through grants by Project Series, a partnership with the U.S. Agricultural Information Network and AGNIC. These are annual grants, annual competitions in which we award digitization funds, so long as the organization commits to retain the print originals of these materials as well. CRL's partnership in science, technology, and engineering is a critical partnership of the Center and a core component of CRL's agenda for shared print collections. Our partnership with the Linda Hall Library has extended access to more than 40,000 current and historical journals held by Linda Hall to make these accessible to CRL members through rapid article document delivery through Rapid ILL. Linda Hall also maintains a strong print preservation component to its collections, and recently CRL and Linda Hall have agreed to merge collections for materials jointly digitized by the two organizations, whereas Linda Hall will digitize the materials and retain the materials in its own state-of-the-art preservation facility. Finally, CRL's partnership in law with LLMC has extended access to more than 63 million pages of legal and governmental materials digitized by LLMC as part of its membership. CRL and LLMC have leveraged the combined membership of the two organizations to identify, preserve, and provide digital access to important at-risk primary source publications, with a particular emphasis from us on international resources. Through our partnership, LLMC has digitized extensive materials such as our U.S. state legislative journals, as well as Canadian provincial journals, primary legal sources from Africa, as well as Latin America, including Haiti and Cuba. And we've recently announced a partnership to work towards the digitization of the early state records document collection, which was preserved in microfilm in the 1940s and 50s. LLMC is working with its members to preserve the first, the East Coast states, including the 13 original colonies, and has brokered a partnership with CRL to raise the funds to digitize the rest of the early state records collection. More information can be found on CRL's website, in particular eDesiderata, our common platform for e-licensing and partnerships. These are just some of the few highlights from our collections. I want to turn this over to Kevin Wilkes to describe more about how you can access CRL's collections. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wilkes of the Access Services Department. Now, James just informed you of our expansive collection. Now I'm going to tell you how you may get access to the collection. Borrowing from CRL is easy. We accept requests through OCLC with Iliad. Our symbol is CRL. We will also accept requests via fax, hard copy forms sent through mail, such as the ALA-ILL form, also through our general email account. Our preferred method, however, is through OCLC Iliad, and however, we are here to accommodate our members. We are affiliated with many consortiums, allowing patron-initiated borrowing such as Rapid for our Colorado members, Prospector, Connect New York, UBorrow, Borrow Direct. We have a very generous loan period for our members of 6 months with unlimited renewals. You will be hearing from us if we are recalling the material for another member institution. All of our loans are shipped UPS second-day delivery. For our members in Ohio, we use the Ohio Link Courier system, and for those in Illinois, we use ILDS. For copies and articles, we use Odyssey, email PDF attachment, fax, U.S. mail, and whatever method is preferred by your institution. We're able to turn around and respond to most requests within 1 business day. Possible delays could range from citation problems to the material just not being on the shelf. We are also filling more and more of our requests digitally. Digital delivery is generated through an IRL request from your institution. After evaluating the material to confirm that it fits our criteria, we will contact you, informing you that the material is being digitized. Once the scanning is completed, we will contact you via email with the URL. Our current turnaround time for digital delivery is between 5 to 10 business days. We will scan not only hard copy, but also microformat as well. This includes microcards. We are willing to work with faculty members who desire to have material digitized for class use. You may also access our digital collection through our digital collection page on our website, as well as the digital version in our catalog. If your patron is off campus, they will need to have proxy through your institution. You may visit these sites for more information on member access and access through proxy. Now, if you have a scholar who is possibly visiting Chicago, they may utilize our reading room here in Chicago by giving us 3 business days advance notice to make certain that the material is here, because we want to verify the material is here since all of our material circulates to member institutions. You may also find tutorials on accessing our collection on our YouTube channel. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me or my staff, and I'm now turning it over to Amy Woods.
Good afternoon. This is Amy Wood, the head of technical services. And now that Kevin has told you about how to borrow material, I will provide an overview of the best way to discover the collections. All of CRL records are available in the CRL catalog, in WorldCat, via all of the OCLC products, major web-scale discovery services such as Primo or Summon, the consortial resource sharing systems such as the ones that Kevin mentioned, and if your institution uses something that CRL does not currently supply, please let us know and we will attempt to participate. You can also load CRL's records into your local catalog. Making these records available locally has been one of the most successful ways members have increased use of CRL collections. And I will provide more information later in the presentation about that. If you are exploring CRL's collections, I recommend starting on the catalog homepage. The URL is in the orange box at the center of the screen. The catalog homepage includes a search box for CRL's catalog, links to CRL topic guides, which compile key resources in important parts or subject areas within the overall collection, and information about scheduling a reference consultation, which is an invaluable service for digging deeply into the collection. CRL's catalog has 5 scopes to help you focus on the material of most interest to you. The labels on each of the tabs of the scopes is descriptive of the type of resource found within each scope. Each scope has the usual library catalog search options and limits, but 2 of the scopes, the newspaper and dissertations, have search features which address common ways of searching those important collections. The newspaper scope has searches that target country or U.S. state of publication, ethnic group represented by the newspaper, and James highlighted many of those in his presentation, or a particular civilian conservation corps company of interest. The additional dissertation scope feature enables you to search by country or degree awarding institution of the dissertation. CRL's digital collection has some of the most frequently used material, and this is an example of a typical record with link to the digital delivery system. From the digital delivery system, you can access the digital resource or version. While searching CRL's catalog is a great way to discover the resources in the collection, I imagine most of your patrons will want to search the records in your local catalog or primary resource discovery system. You can load all of CRL's records, about 1.4 million, or just a subset of the records in your local catalog. You can obtain CRL's records in 3 major ways, which are listed here, either directly from CRL through the major discovery systems or through OCLC's WorldShare Collection Manager. And you have the most control when you receive the records directly from CRL, because you can choose exactly which records you'd like to load. The process of obtaining records from CRL is easy and are outlined here. The most important step in this is really determining which records you want, whether or not you want all of the records, or if we can pull together a subset of records that we can consistently provide you with on a quarterly basis. And once you contact Jocelyn Louisma, whose contact information is listed here, she will help and walk you through the process. If you prefer to obtain the records from the discovery systems, we update the full set of CRL records quarterly. With this option, you do have to load all of CRL's records. You do not have the option to load just a partial set or subset. Obtaining CRL records from WorldShare is an easy way to access records for CRL's electronic resources, but print and microform records are not included in these collections. And CRL has divided the records that are in WorldShare into 3 collections, one for monographs, one for newspapers, and one for serials. And these are updated weekly. More information about obtaining these records is available on the OCLC website at the URL listed here. Thank you very much, and I will now turn the presentation over to Mary Wilkie, Director, Member Liaison and Outreach Services.
Hi, I'm Mary Wilkie. My contact information will be at the end of the presentation along with the other presenters' information. One of the best ways to promote use of CRL collections is for librarians to just know about our CRL collections and services. I say this from my own personal experience, as I've worked at 2 CRL member libraries previously, and one of those jobs included reference desk duties. Yet in both jobs, I knew very little about the incredible resources and programs available before I started working here. Patrons would have benefited from my knowing more about CRL, but unfortunately I didn't know. Reference consultations is one of the great services that CRL provides for its members. Librarians, faculty, and student researchers are all eligible for reference help. They occur when I'm contacted by a librarian, a professor, or a student to help them with a question or problem. The consultations can result in identifying material of interest to researchers for personal research, as was the case in identifying material from the Hamdakasher Colonial Institute for a professor whose area of research was German colonialism. They can result in the identification of foreign English language newspapers for classroom use by a professor who uses the Six-Day War to teach a historical methods class. Or they can result in the identification of material for CRL to purchase via one of our cooperative collection programs, as was done to assist a student working on their master's dissertation, which dealt with Korean missions. CRL's cooperative collection programs can help by providing access to materials that they may not be able to afford. CRL has a number of programs designed to aid both member libraries and scholars in connecting users to the resources they need. More information about these programs can be found on our website by clicking on Collections and then Cooperative Resource Development, and finally on the links to the various programs: Demand Purchase, Purchase Proposal, and Shared Purchase Program. The Demand Purchase Program can meet scholars' individual research needs, or as in the case this past year, a classroom's needs. Via reference consultation with Velma Smith at Florida State University, CRL purchased material to fill in gaps of our newspaper holdings for a class taught by Professor Hauk. He had his class investigate the newspaper coverage across the nation of the death of Emmett Till. The demand purchase program is initiated by an ILL request. Borrowing notes should include something along the lines of please purchase, and there is a $2,000 limit per patron per fiscal year. The patron is your patron. It is not the member institution. Archival materials can also be acquired through this program. This includes not just archives from national governments, but also NGOs and other organizations, institutions. Past acquisitions has included material from a charity hospital and cultural or historical foundations. In the example that I have here, a copy of the Fort Smith sedition trial was purchased for a class use at Northwestern University. Interestingly enough, the U.S. federal courts ordered that this case could not be digitized. As a result, we acquired a paper copy of the entire case. Through a reference consultation with Elena Luckert at the University of Maryland's library and a vendor in Israel, CRL arranged to purchase $2,000 worth of doctoral dissertations from Israel on select topics. This was needed because dissertations from Israel can be very hard to acquire, which is why Luckert arranged for this yearly purchase in response to her professors that she works with. The most popular use of the demand purchase of dissertations is done by CRL in covering the cost of the original digitization of works in Ethos, which is the British Library's online or electronic thesis online services. Once it's been digitized, there's no cost, it's freely accessible. However, that initial digitization must be covered, and CRL will pay for that. Occasionally, the demand purchase program is not enough. One of a result of a reference consultation involving a student writing on several German industrialist trials at Nuremberg resulted in the most important files being purchased through the demand purchase program, but the remaining files were balloted and voted via the purchase proposal program. This is a program that uses CRL funds to purchase items that our member institutions rank in importance for purchasing. Additionally, the shared purchase program has been used to purchase material that does not qualify for the demand purchase program or did not receive enough interest via the purchase proposal program. In the example here, CRL brought coverage of the National Thrift News used by a researcher for his doctoral dissertation that dealt with the savings and loan crisis in the 80s. The initial member library, which had requested this, contributed some funds. CRL contributed some funds. And those member libraries that had funds to support the purchase also contributed. Thus, the shared purchase program works more like a buying club. These examples show tangible results of reference consultations. This happened because member librarians knew to ask CRL for help. Another important way to promote CRL involves making others aware of the wide range of collection CRL offers in addition to your own local resources. And it often involves simply being aware of and using CRL topic guides. You can find CRL topic guides on our website from the green navigation bar at the top of our website. Hover over the word collections and then click on the topic guides link. Topic guides are not comprehensive guides, but rather point out significant collections in a subject area. Please note that CRL often digitizes guides to microform sets to assist with the identification of the needed items or items. Member libraries are encouraged to integrate information on CRL collections into your local library websites, especially into your library reference guides. This might include linking to topic guides or incorporating specific collections. Virginia Curl will talk more about what might be done.
Thanks, Mary. Next slide, please. On the CRL website, in the membership section, a page called Marketing Tools offers resources and suggestions for raising awareness of CRL among your faculty and researchers. We know how useful it can be to mention CRL resources on your library's website, and on this page we've cited some outstanding examples. A number of CRL member libraries devote full web pages to summarizing CRL's collection strengths and services. These pages are often located within an A to Z list of available resources. We hope that these useful pages can also be linked from other local guides for researchers. The University of San Diego actually provides several web pages about CRL. In addition to an overview, separate pages describe CRL's partnerships with the Linda Hall Library and with LLMC, as noted in the tabs at the top of this page, which I don't know how visible they are. Another page that University of San Diego has created gives a broad introduction to the CRL topic guides that Mary noted, and encourages researchers to contact CRL if they have questions about content in the guides or about finding resources for other topics. While some libraries also mention CRL within their own specific subject guides or LibGuides, we've noticed that the reference can often be very broad, along the lines of, the Center for Research Libraries is another resource available to you, and they have a lot of good stuff, more or less. But here's an example of a more specific reference within a subject guide on historical news sources compiled by Dartmouth College. They suggest going to CRL's catalog and browsing by country within the defined search tab for news, which Amy had pointed out. We know that updating subject guides can be a time-consuming process, but we encourage you to consider adding specific, customized references to CRL holdings within your various subject guides. To that end, we've compiled boilerplate text, incorporating a very brief general description of CRL, along with suggestions about expanding this reference with more customizable links, such as to CRL topic guides, or to the CRL catalog's defined scope tabs, or to specific holdings, or even to a custom-crafted catalog search script developed through consultation with Mary Wilkie and her colleagues. This boilerplate language is available linked from our marketing tools page. And just so you know, on the same page, we provide more standard and broader-based boilerplate language available for general resource pages or in local announcements. Please contact CRL's member services if you would like additional descriptive language, copies of the CRL logo, or other illustrations to use in local literature. We know that some member libraries are interested in developing digital ads or slides about the availability of CRL resources for broadcast through on-campus networks. Please let us know how we can help with content for digital ads or for any library orientation materials. And we would really like to hear more about how you may think in the future about integrating reference to CRL collections within your local subject guides. Back to the marketing tools page of our website, CRL has developed several printed resources available in quantity at no cost to you, which are very useful for orientation sessions for new faculty or for graduate students. These are described as on our marketing tools page of our website, and they include an attractive color print collections brochure, a single sheet flyer in PDF or Word format, which can be customized to mention your library's name or to list collection strengths of particular relevance to your academic programs. And finally, attractive bookmarks with the CRL website URL. Finally, here's another tool to help you raise awareness among scholars on your campus about CRL, which we realize can be a challenging task. This past year, we issued a special edition of Connect, CRL's e-newsletter, designed to provide information on recently acquired or digitized primary source materials from various world areas. We stripped away the library jargon about how these materials were acquired to concentrate on the content itself and its potential value for research. The next issue of this Connect Scholars Edition is due to be released in January 2018. You and your colleagues, or the scholars you serve, are invited to sign up for the Scholars Edition. And we encourage you to forward the Scholars Edition to interested parties on campus as well. And I'm just showing you a screen grab from the sign up. This is linked from our homepage. Many of you already are subscribed to CRL Connect, so don't worry, you get Connect already. But there's an option here to sign up in addition to the Connect Scholars Edition. And if you can convince academics to sign up for that as well, they don't have to receive the CRL Connect. That can be both or either to sign up to receive. I'm now going to turn this over to James Simon for our question and answer session, and we encourage you to put questions in through the chat.
Thank you to everyone here at CRL who I think laid out quite a broad and hopefully informative presentation on CRL's collections and access to those and promoting those. We do encourage you, as Virginia said, to submit any questions or comments you may have here through the chat screen. A number of you did express interests in your registration for this webinar as to what you would be interested in hearing about. And I hope that we did address many of those. A bunch of you asked about ways that you could help promote CRL locally on campus, and I hope that Virginia and Mary had suggested some interesting ways. One other suggestion that I had, which came out of a number of site visits that I've made to member institutions, is to make sure that you list CRL in your A to Z list of databases. Whereas most institutions now link to HathiTrust, which is a wide variety of digital resources available to scholars on campus. I've noticed that many of our members have not yet transitioned to thinking CRL as a digital resource, and that one way that you may be able to expose your patrons to the variety of resources we have available is if you list CRL in your databases and tag it with the appropriate subjects that you'd like to have people focus on, such as African studies or political science or newspapers, media studies, and the like. So that's just a suggestion that we've heard from a number of our members. Some of you do list us, so thank you for that. But we encourage you to be as descriptive as possible there, as well as in your LibGuides or topic guides as well. Some of the other registrants expressed a lot of interest in particular subject areas held by CRL. And it's quite difficult sometimes to describe all of our collections and all of our topics in a general presentation such as this, but I hope I can maybe buy us a little time by saying that everything you asked for, we have. We have it all. It's great. people who are interested in Catholic studies, for instance, we have numerous Catholic newspapers here. We have missionary society papers. We have the journals of many of these early missionary, abolitionist, and other types of materials like that in our collections. The best thing I can do is to encourage you, by way of follow-up, is contacting us to see if we can provide some reference consultation for you or for your patron, or even for one of your classes if you're interested in the primary source collections. CRL has had a broad range of previous requests for particular topics, and Mary Wilkie and her team can quickly assemble lists or point you to the appropriate subject guide. And as we've suggested, linking from your own subject guides to CRL's particular resources is a great way to describe some of those collections. But I should also add that Amy's points about loading our records really is the best way for unmediated discovery of CRL's resources. If they can discover it alongside of everything else that they're looking for inside your catalog or your website, the better. The less mediation means that they can get right to those resources as well. So I don't think that we've had any questions coming in through the chat. So I'm going to just hold on for one more minute before we go into wrap up, in case anybody's still typing. I do want to mention just briefly, as we wait for some more questions, one of the topics we didn't express as part of our collecting activities was our licensing program and our licensing activities. We've spent a considerable amount of time addressing that in special webinars, and you can find those on our YouTube channel. But I do want to say that CRL is increasingly engaged in the electronic sphere of licensing materials consistent with the types of collection strengths that we've described here today. So we're working on news and news media licensing programs, of which we'll be talking about this at length in October at our e-Desiderata Forum, and Virginia will describe that. And statistical and government information is another important area. So if you have an interest in materials that are already digitized and available, please do contact us about those, and we can look at those in terms of licensing. One of the questions that just came in was describing the topic guides, and one was expressing interest in potentially creating a topic guide that would be related to formats, or a format guide. What kinds of resources do we have in terms of imagery, or perhaps audiovisual, or newspapers as formats? And I think that's a great suggestion, and we can certainly take a look at that and see if we have enough resources that would merit a full-scale topic guide in those areas. We do already have a topic guide on newspapers, and that can be easily adapted for any variety of your studies. If you have, a LibGuide for history or African studies, you can easily link to our newspaper topic guide to find more information about that. But thanks for that suggestion. That's great. There was a suggestion for more information about who precisely has listed CRL in their A to Z databases. Can we give some examples? I'd be happy to follow up with the questioner about that. If anybody else is interested in that, perhaps we can fold that into our Making the Most of CRL section of our website as well, where we can point to good examples of how people have done that. Great. Virginia? Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, James. Just to follow on that last question about if we could point to examples of libraries that have listed CRL in our A to Z list, from that marketing tools page that I showed, where we show examples of libraries citing CRL, I believe a couple of those examples are pages that are in the A to Z list, but that's a good idea that we could break that out separately and point that out. One way we have tried to search some of your sites under like LibGuide, and we would really love to hear from you when we cite good examples, we'd like to hear from you, what you've done and what you think works. And we did hear from University of Washington that you do have CRL in your A to Z list and also in various subject guides. If we need more examples, thank you. I would like to contact you, and we'll take a look at that. Thank you for that. But not only would we like to provide resources that could enhance your local pages, but we'd love to hear from you of what you're doing. We've also heard a question: what if you want to search all states in a newspaper search? Amy, how does that work?
I can
Yeah, do you want to come over to the mic or just? Okay, so that's an interesting question. So we're talking about the newspaper browse list in the newspaper scope, the state browse list in the newspaper scope.
There is not an option right now to search directly that way. You can do it through the limits and things like that through the advanced search. So I will put together something and provide that with the follow-up materials.
Great, thank you, Amy. Do we have any more questions? We really appreciate your questions and comments, and you can also contact each of us individually. I handle the communications and member services, so if you're not sure who to direct your question to, if you want to send it to me, I'd be happy to. So we want to thank you all for sitting in on this presentation this afternoon. We know you're busy getting ready for the coming academic year, and we hope you've found this useful, and we'd like to continue the conversation on how we can further support awareness of CRL resources on your campus, because we know that's the best way to make your membership work. Thank you also to our presenters. I'd just like to mention an upcoming CRL event. We have the second in our annual series of e-desiderata forums, which James mentioned briefly are looking, I think of it a little bit as a webinar on steroids, but I know that it's more than that, where we take an in-depth look for several hours at one of the, at some of the challenging areas of licensing. And last year we looked at several different areas of big data. This year, news is the particular focus. And did I make a typo in there, James? So that's the link to the registration for the e-desiderata forum. This is a virtual event. It is a webcast. There will not be a recording available later. We really want to encourage candid discussion from the presenters, and we want to encourage your sharing of information about your experiences in trying to access online news. It's coming up October 4th. Finally, we encourage you to stay connected with CRL. Much more information on our website related to the different initiatives that our speakers have referred to. Do sign up for CRL Connect, our e-newsletter, if you have not already. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. And then as you log out today, there is a survey. Your feedback on our content, on its relevance for your work, is extremely important to us and really dictates our future programming. So we do appreciate your taking the time to briefly fill out the survey. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.